There is a mountain that most people outside the climbing world have never heard of. It isn't the tallest, it isn't the most famous, but for decades, it has been the deadliest. On its icy slopes, avalanches strike without warning. Climbers vanish into storms that appear out of nowhere. Bodies remain frozen for decades before they are found, if they are ever found at all. This is Annapurna, a mountain so dangerous that for much of its history, 1 out of every 3 climbers who tried to reach the top never came back. And behind the numbers are stories. The frostbitten First Ascent, a Japanese climber lost without a trace, an avalanche that wiped out an entire expedition, and a storm in 2014 that became one of the worst mountaineering disasters of modern times. Annapurna rises to 26,545 feet in north-central Nepal. It is the 10th highest mountain on Earth, a giant of the Himalayas. Its name comes from Sanskrit, Annapurna, the goddess of the harvest, a name tied to life and nourishment. But for climbers, it carries the opposite meaning. They call it the Mountain of Death. Here's why. Out of all the world's 14 mountains taller than 26,000 feet, Annapurna long held the highest fatality rate. For decades, roughly 1 out of 3 climbers who set out for its summit never returned. In recent years, modern gear and better weather forecasting have lowered the risk, but Annapurna's death rate is still among the highest in the Himalayas. By comparison, Everest has a death rate of about 5 to 6%. K2, notorious for its technical difficulty, is around 25%, but Annapurna has always stood apart for its deadly reputation. The danger isn't just its altitude, it's the terrain itself. The standard routes cut through avalanche corridors, steep snow slopes stacked over unstable ice. Climbers know that at any moment, the entire slope could collapse beneath them. On Everest, the main threats are altitude sickness and exhaustion. On K2, it's vertical walls of rock and ice. On Annapurna, it's the avalanches. Always the avalanches. The mountain's brutal reputation started with its very first climb. In 1950, a French expedition led by Maurice Herzog made history. They became the first humans to climb any mountain over 26,000 feet. Annapurna was their prize. But the summit came at a terrible cost. On the way down, Herzog and his partner, Louis Lacanal, were trapped in a storm. Their gloves froze, their boots filled with snow. When they finally staggered back to safety, both men had suffered severe frostbite. Herzog lost all his toes and most of his fingers. Lacanal's injuries were just as bad. The victory was historic, but the price was devastating. And it set the tone. Annapurna would never give up its summits easily. 3 decades later, Annapurna claimed another climber and never gave him back. In October 1982, Japanese mountaineer Yasuhira Saitō was descending from Annapurna South when he disappeared. Search teams scoured the area but found nothing. His body was never recovered, and to this day, his fate remains one of Annapurna's mysteries. For his family, there was no closure, only the silence of the mountain. If Herzog's frostbite showed Annapurna's cruelty and Saito's disappearance showed its mystery, the Korean expedition of 1991 showed its sheer destructive power. That year, a large Korean team attempted Annapurna, but an avalanche thundered down on their camp, burying tents and climbers under tons of snow. 11 climbers were killed in an instant. It was one of the deadliest single avalanches in Himalayan climbing history. Yet outside the mountaineering community, it barely made headlines, overshadowed by Everest's fame. For Annapurna, it was just another reminder. No matter how strong the team, the mountain could erase them in seconds. Then came 2014, the deadliest Annapurna disaster in modern times. October is normally the safe season in Nepal. Clear skies, stable weather, and thousands of trekkers on the Annapurna circuit. But that year, the mountains hit a threat. That same week, the remnants of Cyclone Hudhud, a powerful storm that had slammed into India, drifted north into the Himalayas, fueling heavy snowfall. On October 14th, the storm struck Annapurna. Within hours, the trails and slopes were buried under several feet of snow. Visibility dropped to zero. Climbers and trekkers alike were trapped in whiteout conditions. Then the avalanches came. Entire groups were swept away. Survivors described being buried up to their necks, gasping for air. Others huddled in makeshift shelters for days, running out of food as the storm raged. When helicopters finally managed to fly in, the scale of the disaster became clear. At least 43 people were dead. Trekkers from Israel, Canada, India, and Poland, along with their Nepalese guides and porters. Dozens more were injured. It was a catastrophe that shocked the world. And yet for those who knew Annapurna's history, it was only the latest chapter in a long line of tragedies. So, why does Annapurna remain so deadly? The science is simple and brutal. Avalanches happen when heavy snow piles onto a weak layer beneath. Add steep slopes, sudden storms, and shifting winds, and the entire mountainside can break loose. Annapurna is built for avalanches. Its slopes are broad and steep, shaped like funnels. Snow doesn't just fall, it gathers, builds, and eventually collapses. Unlike Everest, where danger builds slowly through altitude and exhaustion, Annapurna kills suddenly. 1 minute, the slope looks solid. The next, it's a roaring wall of ice and snow, and no climber can outrun it. That's why Annapurna's death rate has always been among the highest. From Herzog's frostbitten victory in 1950, to the disappearance of Yasuhira Saitō in 1982, to the Korean Avalanche in 1991, and the storm disaster of 2014, Annapurna has earned its grim title as one of the deadliest mountains on Earth. It doesn't matter if you are an elite climber or a casual trekker. On Annapurna, avalanches and storms don't discriminate. Yet still, climbers come, drawn by its history, by its challenge, by the idea of surviving what so many could not. This was Annapurna, the deadliest mountain in the world. But across the globe, there are other peaks just as unforgiving. Storms on K2, avalanches on Nanga Parbat, frozen bodies left behind on Everest. On Vertical Disasters, we'll uncover them one by one. If you want to hear more true stories of mountains gone wrong, subscribe. And tell me in the comments, would you ever set foot on Annapurna? Or is this one summit better admired from afar?